Hi everyone, welcome to Draw with Jan channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw and color a simple flower using oil painting. Oil painting is generally considered difficult because of the tools and techniques involved. However, once you learn it, it is the most forgiving medium. It allows you a lot of time to paint and also easily correct any mistakes. I have covered the details of materials used for this drawing in my video and also posted it in the description. Let's get started. I'm using US Art Supply 4x4 inch canvas panel. This is 100% cotton canvas, gesso primed. For brushes, I'm using a range of brushes from Mont Marte, a liner brush, a round brush and a Filbert brush. I'm using refined linseed oil as the medium for my oil painting. Medium is used to adapt the consistency, drying time and the finish of your painting. I'm using Turpenoid for cleaning my brushes. You can also use Turpenoid as a solvent for your oil paint if you want thinner layers that dry faster. Using a palette for oil painting is very helpful in blending colors. I'm going to get started with yellow paint for the center of the flower. I'm using a liner brush, dipping it in linseed oil and getting some yellow paint on my brush. I'm now applying this on the canvas board. When it comes to oil painting, one simple rule that you always need to remember is fat over thin or slow over fast. Now what does that mean? Let's say you're using 2 layers of colors in your oil paint. You need to make sure that your first layer dries sooner than the second layer. This will help prevent any cracks in your painting later on. Now how do you make sure that your first layer dries sooner than the second layer? I will come back to this after showing you how to mix colors in oil painting to get the desired shade. In this case, I need a shade of purple for the flower petal, so I'm mixing Carmine and Ultramarine blue to get the desired shade. I'm also using a bit of white to get a lighter shade of the same for my base layer. There is some trial and error involved in finding the right shade, so take a little bit of each color at a time and keep mixing them until you find the right shade. And remember the proportion that you used because you're going to need more of the color later on. As you can see in the reference picture, there are different shades of purple in the painting. Once you find the right shade of purple, you can just use white to get the different ranges of shades within that color. Now the base layer is quite simple. I'm just applying the color on the canvas. Now coming back to the rule of fat over thin or slow over fast. How do we make sure that the first layer dries faster than the subsequent layers, or the first layer is thinner than the subsequent layers? Using more linseed oil means more drying time. So in your first layer, use lesser linseed oil compared to your subsequent layers. Alternatively, you could use a solvent as a thinner in your first layer to speeden up the drying time. Turpenoid works good as a solvent. In this case, I am not using Turpenoid, I am just using a little bit of linseed oil for my painting. This is a simple painting and there are not too many layers, so using linseed oil just works fine. You will know how much of linseed oil to use with experience. The best way to learn is to experiment and find out for yourself how different mediums such as linseed oil or Turpenoid work in an oil painting. Now completing the base layer of shading and moving on to the background. For the background, I'm just using 2 colors, black and white. You can mix these 2 colors in whatever proportion you need to get the desired shade of grey that you would like in your oil painting. I'm starting with the darker shade first and then I'm going to slowly blend it in. I'm using a Filbert brush for the background. As you can see, the tip of the brush is slightly flat and it works well for this kind of a background. I have now mixed some white into the color and going for a slightly lighter shade compared to the previous one. Now using some more white for blending the colors. I am just using the tip of the brush and making very gentle strokes to blend in the colors. Once you apply the colors in all the areas, you can also use a plain soft brush for blending. The best part about oil painting is that it is a forgiving medium, and even if you make any mistakes, you can correct it easily. Let's say after blending the colors, you feel this is too light and you want the background to be darker, you can just add some more gray or black and blend it all over again. And vice versa, if you feel your background has to be lighter, you can just add in white on top of your gray layer. All this is possible because of the long drying time, which allows you to blend the shades easily. I find blending in oil painting much more easier than any other medium like color pencils or watercolor. Just remember the simple rule: slow over fast. Fast drying paint comes first, and slow drying paint comes in the end. This is especially important when you're adding multiple layers. Let's say for the background, you're first adding a layer of color, you're not happy with it, and you're adding another layer of color. If your top layer dries up before your first layer does, then it could result in cracks in your oil painting. The first few times, you're going to find it difficult to remember these rules. However, with practice, you will know what medium to use, when to use, and how much to use. What follows now is the complete video of the background shading using the techniques that I just described. Almost done with the background, but as you can see, the blending is still not smooth enough. I'm going to leave this for now, allow it some time to dry, and come back to this after completing the petals. I'm now going to show you one petal in detail and a time-lapse video of the rest of the petals. First, I'm using white, and I'm using a liner brush, almost like a pencil. As you can see, I'm just drawing those white lines on the petal. Mix enough linseed oil with the white color to produce a smooth effect. If you do not take enough oil, you might end up getting cracks in your lines as you're drawing them. For the darker areas, I'm using the purple shade that we had previously created using Carmine and Ultramarine blue. I have also created a mid-tone of this shade by adding a little bit of white to it. And by using the right amount of linseed oil, I'm almost using my brush like a pencil and drawing those lines. I'm first using the mid-tone to draw those lines, and finally I will be using the darkest shade of purple to draw those lines. As you're drawing those lines, also pay attention to some of those areas where you're blending it into the previously created shade. Now using dark purple near the center and also on some areas of the petal. Finally, using white for some highlights. What follows now is a time-lapse video of painting the rest of the petals. Now for the center of the flower, I'm using burnt umber and a liner brush to draw tiny circle-like patterns. Now using burnt sienna to shade some of the areas in the center of the flower. Finally, I'm using the darkest shade of purple for the areas around the center of the flower to produce the shadow effect. I'm using a lot of oil here, and because of the lighting, you're not able to see it properly in the video. However, you can take a look at the reference picture to see how it finally looks. I'm just making the areas near the center of the flower darker. And as you're drawing, try to blend it in and don't make it look like abrupt lines. And finally, some finishing touches to the petals. Thank you for watching my video. Hope you found it useful. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more drawing videos.